My dad wasn't like the other dads. He had a stillness to him, a quiet that you could feel. While other fathers were coaching Little League or firing up the grill, mine was often just sitting on the porch, staring into the woods that backed up to our property. It was years before I understood that he wasn't just looking at the trees, he was looking through them, back into a past that had forged him in fire and ice. This is the story of how my father escaped, not just from a prison of bars, but from a tomb of wilderness. His name was Jack, and before he was my dad, he was inmate number 78439, being transported from a federal penitentiary in Washington state to a higher security facility in Colorado. The plane was a small, twin-engine puddle jumper, and for Jack, it was a final glimpse of a world rushing by. Somewhere over the rugged vastness of the Rocky Mountains in Montana, the plane hit an air pocket so violent it felt like a car hitting a brick wall. Then came a sickening shudder, the deafening roar of a failing engine, and the smell of burning oil. The cabin became a screaming, tumbling metal coffin. The last thing he remembered was the terrifying sight of pine trees, like a million spears, rushing up to meet them. He woke to a silence so profound it was louder than the crash. The pain was a single, screaming nerve from head to toe. He was strapped in his seat, which had been torn from the fuselage and thrown clear. The main wreckage was a grotesque sculpture of torn metal wedged between two massive Douglas firs. There were no other sounds. No moans, no cries for help. Just the whisper of the wind through the pines. He was the only one left alive. The first thing you learn, Mikey, he'd tell me, his voice low and gravelly, is that your mind is your first enemy. Panic will kill you faster than the cold. He knew what to do because of his Uncle Frank. Frank was a former Force Recon Marine, a Vietnam vet with a 1,000-yard stare who'd taken a young, wayward Jack under his wing for a few summers. They'd spent weeks in the Appalachian foothills. Fire, shelter, water, signaling, Frank would drill into him. In that order. Forget food. A man can live weeks without food. Fire came first. His hands were bloody and shaking, but he found a cheap plastic lighter in the pocket of the dead transport officer's jacket. He gathered dry twigs, birch bark, nature's perfect tinder, and built a small teepee of kindling. That first flicker of flame, cupped in his trembling hands, wasn't just heat, it was a declaration of war against the indifferent wilderness. Shelter was next. Using a piece of torn fuselage, his seat cushion, and a tangle of spruce boughs, he built a lean-to against a large, sheltering rock. It was cramped and smelled of damp earth, but it broke the wind. From the wreckage, he salvaged a metal water bottle, a half-crushed packet of crackers, and a first aid kit, which felt like winning the lottery. The nights were the real test. That's when the owners of the forest came to check on the new tenant. First, it was the coyotes, their yips and howls forming a chilling chorus just beyond the ring of firelight. He'd stoke the flames, making them roar and crackle, a barrier of light against the darkness. Once, a mountain lion screamed, a sound he said was like a woman being murdered, so close it made the hair on his neck stand up. He stood his ground by the fire, brandishing a burning branch, staring into the darkness until the feeling of being watched faded away. Days bled into weeks. He set crude snares, remembering Uncle Frank's lessons, and caught a few snowshoe hares. He found a stream and purified the water with iodine tablets from the kit. He talked to himself, to the memory of my mother, a girl he loved before a bad decision and a stolen car sent him away. Those conversations were the rope that kept him from falling into the abyss of madness. Then the snow came. The Rockies in early winter are merciless. The taiga locked up tight under a blanket of white. He knew he had to move or die. He fashioned a crude sled from a piece of debris, packed his meager possessions, the water bottle, the remains of the tarp, the precious lighter. He used the few clear nights to navigate by the Big Dipper, pointing the way south, towards where he hoped he'd find a road, a trail, anything. He walked for days. The cold was a physical enemy, sapping his strength. His boots were falling apart. On the 5th day, his food was gone, and hope was a dim ember. Just as he was about to give up, to lie down in the snow and sleep, he saw it. Through a gap in the trees, a single, steady yellow light. Not the flicker of his fire, but the unwavering glow of an electric bulb. He stumbled to the door of a remote hunting cabin and knocked, his fist barely making a sound. The door opened to reveal an old man in a red flannel shirt, a shotgun held loosely but ready at his side. The man looked at Jack's emaciated frame, his matted beard, his clothes made of scraps and sinew. "You look like you've walked through hell, son," the man said, his voice rough as granite. "Come on in. Coffee's on." There was an investigation, of course. The FAA, the FBI. But the story of the escaped convict was buried by the tragedy of the crash and the miracle of his survival. His sentence was commuted due to time served and extraordinary circumstances. He found my mom. He started over. He became dad. Now, when I see him staring at those woods, I finally understand. He didn't just survive the wilderness. He made a deal with it. It took the man he was and burned him away, leaving behind the foundation of the man I'm proud to call my father. Every scar on his hands, every moment of quiet strength, is a lesson from the dark. A lesson he passed on to me